All right, so today I have on Taylor Palmby, and she is a therapist and the director of communication at HeartSupport. Thanks so much for joining me today, Taylor. How are you?
Oh, I am so good, Tammy. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you on because I know I originally reached out to you like months ago, after joining Almost 30 community. So shout out to Almost 30.
We
Met so
love
many
them.
amazing people like yourself, like from that. So I'm just glad that you have made the time to come on the show. So yeah, tell us a little bit about you. Who's Taylor?
I love that question. Well, I always say I'm like my personal brand is Elle Woods Goes to Warp Tour. I like um being very loud and extra in a lot of those ways and come off very bubbly a lot of times. And I feel like something about me that I've struggled with is I feel like people underestimate me because of how I present as like maybe a little more um yeah, just like, I mean, I'm wearing like a tiger shirt today, and I love pop punk and metal music. And that's my favorite place to be is like at a show. But I'm also super passionate about mental health and helping people. And so it's been really cool for me to be able to try to combine all of the things that I'm interested in. And even my wounding, a little bit of like, I feel like I don't fit in sometimes, and I feel like people don't get me. And even been I've even been able to add that into my career in a way of like trying to make sure that other people feel like they have a place where they belong. And yeah, so I teach spin and I do a lot of things. I'm a therapist and I work for a nonprofit in the metal music industry. Um, and I work in music marketing. I currently have 6 jobs. That's what it's like living in New York City, where the cost of living is so high. But my main gig is being a therapist and working for a mental health nonprofit and teaching some exercise classes.
I love your personal brand because I think that's like when I reached out to you because I was like, oh my God, finally. Like I've met like one other person, but I was like, finally, somebody that's like super friendly but also loves like, this genre of music. I like because Elle Woods was like my inspiration. Like started like
Yes.
I think I first saw the movie back in like when we were probably in like when I was in first grade. So I was like, oh my God, this girl's great. But I have always loved that genre of music, pop punk. I know like you love MGK, and I was like,
Oh my
oh my
God.
God. I was like, I love his new music. So love your personal brand. I would say probably like mine would be like Elwood's and then meets Morticia Adams. I've always loved
Oh
her. She
my
was
God. I
always
love
my like other
that.
like inspiration. I don't know why.
Oh my God. I
But
love that. Did you love Wednesday?
oh, I didn't watch it actually, but yet. Don't
It's so
think.
good.
Oh, I
You
have
gotta
to.
watch it.
Okay.
It's so good.
I
Yeah.
totally will. Yeah, because I love like I don't know, I love that like all the
Yeah.
music and
Yeah,
things.
and I mean, I think like as a woman, Al Woods, it just was so cool to me to see people like underestimate her, and then she just kind of like proved them wrong. I was in Legally Blonde the musical
So
in
was I.
college. Oh my God,
I was
really?
in it in high school.
I can sing it top to bottom. It's like I have
Me too. It's the best.
it's so, oh my God, it's so good. I have a tattoo of the quote from Hamlet that Vivian says at the top of Find My Way, which is to thine own self be true. And it goes on more, but yeah, it's just like it's such an inspirational thing. And I think like when I'm going through a hard time, I often think like, okay, who can I embody? Who can I try to be? Who do I want to be like as I go through this? And Elle Woods has always been a person that I'm like, okay, what would Elle Woods do? Like, what would she do? How can I hack this to be more, to feel more confident and to just own it 100% of the way? So it might be silly, but also the movie's amazing and it works.
What's your sun, moon, and rising? Just out of curiosity.
Oh my
If
God, I
you know.
love this question. Yes, Sagittarius sun, Sagittarius rising, and Aries moon.
Ah, cool. Okay,
So all
cool.
fire, only fire.
Oh my God, I love that.
What's yours?
I am a Libra sun, Scorpio moon, Aquarius rising.
Oh, I
Yeah, so
love.
I have a Scorpio stellium, which is something I only found out, in more recent years about myself, and I was like, "What?" So, but yeah, I feel like my like the polar opposite of like Libra meets Scorpio is like I think that's where I get my Elwoods meets the darker things that I
Oh,
love or whatever.
I love that. Yeah. It's like so balanced.
It's so
Dang.
so weird. Um, but wait, just one more question about Legally Blonde. Who did you play in it?
I was a sorority sister, and then I was, yeah,
Ew.
so I got to like carry Bruiser around though, and we had a real
Okay.
dog in the production. It was so cute. And then I was like a cellmate in Whipped into Shape. It was
Okay.
really fun. I think I was just like a chorus part, but
Okay.
I have I love a funny story is I was going through a breakup and I was singing Find My Way at like the top of my lungs at like 10:30 in the morning in my apartment. And someone came and knocked on my door and was like, could you like keep it down? And I was like, oh, this is so embarrassing. First of all, second of all, I'm going to talk about this in therapy because no, I can't keep it down. Like I'm going through something. How dare you ask? Um, but yeah, Legally Blonde has always been just had a special place in my heart.
Yeah, if you are a listener and haven't listened to that soundtrack, literally go to YouTube's, if it's on Spotify, go listen. 10 out of 10.
10 out of
Love,
10. So good.
love it. So, like so many people that end up in careers relating to, medical um, or therapists and different, I guess, healing professions, maybe I could call it. What kind of led you on the path to wanting to become a therapist?
Hmm, that's such a good question. Yeah, I found that most people in these fields have some sort of in therapy in particular have some sort of like mental health experience themselves that was really challenging. And that's definitely the case for me. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin and I never really felt like I fit in. I listened to different music. You know, cared about different things. I was never really popular and I was bullied pretty badly in middle and high school. And um, I started to develop like severe anxiety and depression. And at first, I was like kind of confused about it because although I had been bullied, I did have friends. I got great grades. I was the captain of the dance team. My family was super supportive. And so when I started struggling with my mental health, it didn't look the way that I had seen it portrayed or I had heard about on TV. Like I wasn't crazy, nothing really bad happened to me. And so it was really hard for me to grapple with. And thankfully, my mom and my dad, but my mom, really had some experience with her family with it. And so she knew what to do and how to handle it. And she made sure I went to the doctor. And actually, the first time I went to a doctor was a terrible experience. He very much like minimized and was very misogynistic and was like, you're just a teenager. These are just hormones. And no, like suicidal ideation is not a normal thing that a teenager should be experiencing. So thankfully, my mom took me to someone else and forced me to get into therapy. And I started to talk about mental health a little bit more. And one of the places that I went to talk about it was 5 Seconds of Summer was my favorite band of all time growing up. And I would go into these fan communities and I would talk about mental health with these like strangers on the internet, which sounds bad, but it ended up being amazing. And I was able to find community connecting over something that I wasn't able to connect with anyone else about. And at the same time, one of my best friends growing up, his name was Will, he had severe mental health issues and struggles, and he would talk to me about his self harming. And so that was kind of all happening in the background. I'm navigating my own struggles. I'm grappling with stigma that I didn't even realize I had, basically, because, like, we talk about geometry in school, but we don't talk about mental health. Like we don't teach kids about how to take care of themselves or how to navigate emotions, or that if you're struggling with anxiety and depression, it's like it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. So I'm kind of navigating all of that. And then my freshman year of college, I was going to go to school to be a music therapist, but I have nodes and you can kind of hear like the rasp in my voice. I wanted to be a singer and a musician my whole life. And I ended up feeling like I couldn't do that. So I went to school to be a journalist. And as soon as I entered college, my friend died by suicide. And that kind of changed the whole trajectory of my life. Like Will is my friend who I'd mentioned that passed away. And I realized how no one was talking about it, and how if someone would have supported him and someone would have supported me and we would have talked about it, and everything could have been different. And so I started to really get involved in mental health organizations and talk about mental health and report on mental health, um, and sexual assault also kind of tied in there as well. And yeah, it just started snowballing. Like my life experiences directly led me to this field, and I'm grateful that they did. A long-winded answer. Apologize.
First, I'm sorry to hear about your loss. That's like any like loss is, well, one thing that I talk about a lot, but when it's, I feel, unexpected, it hits
Yeah.
even harder sometimes, or at least what I think.
Yeah.
But I really like love that your parents were, and your mom was like such an advocate for you and really helped, because I think that so many people with our parents' generation, like they get shut down, and like literally, I mean, I struggled with suicidal ideation definitely middle school and probably a little bit of high school, because like you, like kind of felt like I had friends, but like felt like I didn't really like maybe fit in, or I just like
Yeah.
floated around to like different groups or whatever, or areas, because I was an athlete but then also did like the show, and like, so it was like all over the place. But yeah, I remember being like, I really, like, I need to talk to somebody, like I need like help, because felt like I was struggling, but like, but and nothing against my mom, but like at the time she was like, oh, it's like hormones, it's your hormones. And like
Mm.
I never went. Like in high school,
Yeah.
I mean, I go now, but like, so I just think that's such a huge thing, like with parents shutting kids down. Do you like have some of your clients like ever talk about that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't see kids anymore, but I used to see kids, and even the parents that would get their kids help, anytime it was kind of like you have to maybe change something, or like maybe this is more serious than you think it is, they would really push back. And I think that there's like a lot of discomfort in thinking like, oh, if my kid needs therapy, then maybe I'm doing something wrong. And like, it's just not actually true. Maybe there are things that you could do to support them and to help make sure that they are, as healthy as they can be. But also, emotions are hard. Like being a kid in this world is hard. Social media, oh my gosh, it's so, I think about all the time, and some of my bullying happened on the internet, but I'm 27, so not that much, right? Like
Right.
YouTube was the thing. We didn't have Instagram really. It was just starting. I think about kids now. If you're being bullied at school, you go home from school and you're just being bullied on the internet. Like it's
Can't.
terrible. It's so challenging. And they have a lot of unique challenges, not to mention all of the state of the world and the political climate, and um all of the tragedies that have occurred recently in schools and outside of them. I think that it's never a bad thing to have extra support. And I noticed that my clients who did have that support, who have been in therapy when they're younger, have a lot more insight around their experiences and their emotions and how they process things. And they also have like closer relationships typically with um with their family members and things like that, because they were able to feel supported in the way that they needed to. Not always, but
Mhm.
anecdotally, at least the clients that I see.
Yeah, I'm so glad we grew up when we did because the social media is, especially I feel like TikTok, I feel like they can be the most brutal. I haven't like personally like experienced it. I'm sure like it could come someday, but um I just, yeah, I feel like there's no filter on like TikTok at all. They're like just so brutal there. Like looking
Yeah.
at other people's, I'm like, damn, like you're talking to a person. Like, what are you doing? Like,
I
it's really,
mean, it's crazy. I don't have like a huge following on TikTok by any means, but I had like a couple of videos go viral,
yeah, I
and
saw that.
I'm a therapist, right? Like I like to think that I have, and of course I don't always have the best handle on my emotions, but I'm a 27-year-old person who has done a lot of work. And some of the comments that I received, even I was like, oof, ouch, that hurts. Like, ooh, mean. And I was joking to my roommate, like, you make a comment on something like that, I just block, 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 block. I just can't tolerate it. But these kids, this is me, someone who has a lot of skills, a lot of tools, a strong support system. Can't imagine if I would have received negative comments when I was 15 or 12, 13. Like, oh, it's
Mhm.
it's crazy to me.
Right. And like you said, you get like people get bullied at school and they come home and they can't escape it. So I was never like repeatedly bullied, but like have been, I've had girls like say some things sometimes, and that shit, like even though it only happened like, a handful of times, like that sticks with you. Like,
Mm.
and now these kids have it on social media too, so it's just like it's just I I definitely send everybody love, but I hope things turn around. But so can you explain the like what suicidal ideation is for maybe somebody who hasn't heard of it? Because I know I didn't know what that was back then when I was experiencing it.
Yeah. Suicidal ideation and intent are different. And I'm going to start with intent because I think it's easier to understand. Intent is when someone actually has a plan to harm or kill themselves or someone else. So they know what they're going to do, and maybe there are levels to risk, right? If someone has intent and they have a plan, like that is risky. But if they have a plan and then they have means to be able to um, follow through on that plan, then that's an added layer. And then if they have a time frame that they're going to do it in, and that time frame is imminent, that's when we really call like crisis services. We make sure that they're getting to the hospital, things like that. If they have any kind of intent or even intention, ideation, we usually will create a safety plan to make sure that they're safe. But ideation can range from anywhere of, it would just be easier if I didn't wake up. It would just be better if I would disappear, or I just wish I wasn't here, or I wish I could take my life, or, I wish I were never born, or maybe it would be nice to um, take my life, or fantasizing or daydreaming about what a funeral might look like, or things like that. Just a preoccupation with like, this is too hard. I can't do it anymore. And varying degrees of severity of like, I want to do this, but I can't because of X, Y, and Z, to I just wish I didn't wake up tomorrow. That would be easier. It can all fall under the umbrella of suicidal ideation. But as a therapist and as a person, anytime I hear someone say something like that, I try to get more information to see if there's intent to actually follow through on it, and then also to see what kind of support they do have. And I think a common misconception is that if we ask people if they're thinking about harming themselves or someone else, that will give them the idea. But over and over and over and over again, research shows that that's actually not the case, and it helps protect them. So, not being afraid to ask if you are a safe person in a safe way, like not in a joking kind of whatever way, but can actually be really helpful.
Oh, that's good to know because I know, yeah, people were scared to even ask, like you said, because they might get the idea, but that's a really important thing to know.
Yes, yeah, and it's not going to do that, and especially if you do some research. And there are some really easy things that you can do if you do have a friend or a person in your life who you think might be struggling with suicidal ideation. If you just say, like, hey, some of the things that you've been saying are making me a little bit worried about you. I'm wondering, like, have you ever thought about this? And like, if you have, can we talk about it and talk about how to support you? That can actually be a really beautiful way to show someone how much you care about them and to open up the door for them to get resources and support if they need it.
Now, for somebody that is struggling, and maybe let's say that they have experienced some ideation, what are some things that, okay, wait, scratch that. I'm like losing my train of thought. I'm gonna edit that out. Okay, what I would love to know is what are some of the common things that you have been seeing with some of your clients or some of your patients?
Oh, that is such a good question. Ooh, um, something that I've been thinking about. I'm going to start with this, and as I'm telling you, I'm going to try to think of more because that's such a good question, and I want to know. I want to really think about the similarities that I see. But something I've been thinking a lot about in my work is we often think about mental health issues as an internal problem, right? It's like there's something wrong internally in the way I process emotions, in the way I navigate emotions. Sometimes, maybe there's a chemical imbalance. We talk about that, but genetics, internal. And sure, I think there's an aspect of that. But something that's been really profound for me to notice is that I have not had anyone sit across from me on the couch, nor had anyone that I've worked with at HeartSupport, the nonprofit I work at, that hasn't had something really terrible happen to them. Different degrees of terrible, but ranging from abuse, neglect, bullying, isolation, like severe, serious loss, all of these things. I've yet to meet someone that hasn't had that kind of experience when they're seeking help and support, whether or not they would label it as traumatizing or the person next to them would. When I get the picture of the whole of their life, I always am able to see, like, oh my gosh, it makes sense why you're struggling. It really makes sense. And these pieces of yourself that we might label as anxiety or depression, and this is from a very IFS perspective, but they're just parts of you and they're not bad parts. We just have to understand what their job is and where they came from. And then maybe we can help heal them. So I think like that similarity to me, there is a similarity of like everyone has had something really horrible happen to them. And everyone is walking through this world either carrying something that painful that has happened to them or about to walk into something painful that will happen to them and they don't know it. And that just allows me to give people a lot of compassion. I notice I work with a lot of people that struggle with relationship issues, and I see couples too. I see a lot of couples, and it's really interesting because almost every relationship dynamic and conflict can be summed up in the by saying that there is a person who's pursuing and there's a person who's withdrawing. There's a person who is trying to come close and trying to fight, and they're the person that will, bring up issues and want to talk about things. And then there's a person who will kind of shut down a little bit more and withdraw. And I really see a lot of that very clearly and have been able to help both my individuals and my couples notice and catch those dynamics. And I do that from an EFT perspective. All these labels, IFS is internal family systems and EFT is emotion focused therapy. But I think it's very interesting. I always say in therapy, everything is everything. So whatever is happening in therapy is happening outside of therapy. Whatever relationship dynamics are happening between you and your partner, they're probably happening in some way between you and your friends. And what you notice about the world is a reflection of yourself. So, yeah, I don't know that I answered your question, but I do think it's a really good one. And I'm going to be thinking about those similarities.
No, thank you for answering that. Yeah, because I think that's so interesting. Like you said, like we all kind of everybody goes through something, and though one thing might be quote unquote like this isn't the right terms, but like it might seem small to one person, but it might have been super traumatic for somebody else. So I think that's such a great thing to remind the listeners is like, we all go through something. And I think
Yeah.
like the interesting thing
Mm.
to me with like for my mental health journey, like like I said, like we like I experienced it high school, middle school, and I think it definitely gave me a perspective on things. And then after like my mom passed, that's when things got really bad again. And I was already burnt out, but that's when I started to have the suicidal ideation. But like you said, but it got like more severe to the point where like you're saying like thinking about it, and it became like so like I was like, okay, real, like my mom's gone. I don't really have anything else left like
Mm.
to like do. I saw some of the world or the country, like, ah, this is it. Like so yeah. So I had to
Mm.
like I checked myself into the hospital. Thank God I had, that availability. I was able to,
Mm.
but and it's definitely like something, super, super scary for so many
Yeah.
people.
I'm so sorry for your loss, and like so the way that it led to that, but so glad that you were like, no, okay, I need to do this. I have to get help, and then we're able to. You know, that's all we can hope for, is that when you need help, people will reach out.
Right. So as far as like, so say somebody is struggling, or maybe they hit like a rock bottom, maybe they don't necessarily have any ideation, or the suicidal thoughts, but maybe, this is they are experiencing maybe a little bit of sadness or depression. What are like some things that you've maybe suggest that can help one, kind of get back up after that spot? Or that was a big question, but
No, that's such a good question. I think I want to just start by saying, when I see a client actually at rock bottom, like in a place where they're like, they can't really see the light around them. And this isn't always the case, but sometimes I get very excited, and it feels like, a little internally inappropriate. I'm like, oh, this person's in pain and I'm excited. But the reason I get excited is because I have seen over and over and over again that rock bottom is the most like fertile ground for transformation. And I call it with myself. And I went through a rock bottom recently, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, where after I went through a really terrible breakup, and I was suicidal in a way that I had never really been before. It was like very had a lot of ideation, and yes. So I have learned, and I have looked back on all of the times I thought that I've hit rock bottom, and it's always been just the place that has brought me closer to myself and who I'm supposed to be. And I call it, you're in the caterpillar soup. You're in the caterpillar soup, because I think I love butterflies, and I think it's
me
so
too.
crazy. I love them. Like, and it's so insane to me how caterpillars enter a cocoon, and then they like turn into this like literal, like, this is true. This is true. They turn into like a soupy like substance, and then they reform, and they're a butterfly. They come out a butterfly. But I think about like, okay, this sweet little caterpillar enters this cocoon. I'm sure it's like, what in the heck is going on here? It's dark. I actually feel like I'm melting, like I'm turning into something that I don't know. I don't understand this. And then miraculously time happens and it's able to emerge a butterfly. And we do that too. Like we find ourselves in caterpillar soup as well, but we have to just trust the process as much as we can, that it's going to lead to us blossoming and becoming a butterfly. Now, I say that with the complete understanding that if you're in rock bottom, that sounds like a bunch of like bullshit, for
Yeah.
lack of a better word. You're like, I don't want to hear that. That's not helpful to me. But if you can grab onto that perspective and try to believe it, I think it can be helpful. And, you know, my first thing, there are so many things I think that can help. I talk about there are two kinds of self-care. There's maintenance mode self-care and there's crisis mode self-care. And I think where people get into a lot of trouble is we try to do maintenance mode self-care when we're in a crisis, and then we wonder why it's not helping, right? And when you're in a crisis, you need crisis mode self-care, whatever that means for you. So if your maintenance means you go to therapy once a week, you work out every other day, and you get 6 hours of sleep, maybe your crisis mode means you go to therapy twice a week, you work out an extra couple days a week, you cancel any non-essential plans and slow down, or maybe it means you make more plans. What everyone needs to feel good is a little bit different. Like for me, I need therapy twice a week. I need my friends. I need journaling. I need medication. Somebody else might need meditation, tapping, journaling, and a community group. It's knowing what helps you feel good and then adding even more of that, I think is super important, and not beating yourself up for not feeling good with your maintenance mode self-care, not feeling good enough, like not being like, oh, I'm doing this, this, and this, I should feel fine. It's like, no, maybe you just have to adjust. Like maybe the recipe is a little different. And so really giving yourself permission to take care of yourself first and foremost during this time that you're really struggling. I think that there are like 3 pillars to healing, and it's like really broad, but it's like professional help, whatever that looks like, whether it's medication, whether it's therapy, whether it's even a personal trainer or a life coach or, a spiritual leader, whatever that is, professional help, community. And that can look like a variety of different things too. For me, it looks like really being in my music community. That's what feels good to me. And also entering like the Almost 30 community and finding new communities where I could feel connected to people. And the third one is personal and spending time with yourself and learning what you need. So it's like, 3 pillars and they cover everything in the world. Like that's annoying. But I think you need some from each of those things in order to really heal. So if you're not feeling well, looking at, okay, where am I missing? What am I missing here? Do I not have professional help? Do I not have a community? Do I not, am I not spending enough time with myself, or am I not treating myself and my body well? And I think the community aspect is really important too, because what we know is that when you serve others and when you help others, it actually helps you. So that's a lot of the work I do at HeartSupport. And I'm going to finish my diatribe in a moment, but that's a lot of the work we do at HeartSupport is we see that when you are struggling, if you are able to help someone else, that gives you a sense of purpose and that actually helps you. So leveraging that can be really helpful. And that's a piece of why I think community is so amazing.
So many
I just
amazing things that you just said. First, love how you said about that, that rock bottom can cultivate growth. It's a beautiful space. And I think, I'm sure we can both attest to that.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's so, of course, as long as, one gets, if one needs the mental health help, like definitely definitely gets that, but it can be a wonderful like spot to like for regrowth, like even
It's
though it's
every
frustrating and like very upsetting to be in it and to be like, oh, why is nothing ever working out for me? Or like, or everything always goes wrong. I've heard, a number of people say that. And how you talked about the two different types of care. I've never thought of it like that because sometimes like some days, one method might work, but I need the more, oh, I'm in a deeper I'm feeling worse pretty bad, so I
Ah.
need something more intense. I think that's amazing that you shared that bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like we think about it in terms of like other ways, right? It's like if I haven't eaten all day, I'm going to need a bigger dinner than if I've had my other two meals. It's like
Right.
if I'm sad, if I'm depleted, I'm going to need more to care for myself than if I'm feeling content. But some of these things might be intuitive in those other areas, but because we don't really think or talk about mental health enough, we don't realize. Um, so it's hard, and it's hard to make the time, I think, for a lot of us too, but it's important.
Was there anything else for that for that suggestion? I don't know if I interrupted you. I'm like, because I think one thing though that definitely that I also just heard you say is being like intuitive, because to do any of that we have to be able to like to check in too, which is something so many people don't know how to do or like are afraid to
Or
do, just well, being just so disconnected to ourselves. But I know that you said that's one of the pillars is reconnecting to self. But yeah, I think that's one thing that's helped me so much is like, and maybe to the point, maybe I do it too much nowadays, but just being like, how am I feeling today? What do I need? And like literally just like constantly asking
I
myself.
love that. Love that.
Yeah.
I think that's so hard. And I think, I think a lot of people struggle with it, but I think women especially are told over and over and over and over and over again not to trust themselves in a variety of different ways, or that they don't know what's best for them and that other people do know. And it's something I struggle with a lot and I'm working on currently is I outsource. I outsource everything. I'm like, what do you think? What should I do? What's this? Like what about this? What about that? And it's been a real challenge for me to say like, wait, okay, do I actually need to outsource this? Maybe not. Some things I do, some things I want to gather information. And it's helpful, but do I actually need to? Okay, no. Like, can I try to feel around and feel into what's right? And I think when we're so disconnected from ourselves, this is such a practice. And it doesn't have to be, it's not like, okay, I'm only going to check in with myself now. You're learning to trust yourself. You're learning to trust your intuition and you're building that muscle. And it might take time and that's okay. But I think the best way to do that is to start spending time with yourself. And it's not like, okay, I need to make all the big decisions in my life alone now. It's like, no, make the small decisions. And so I even like, I'll call my mom and I'll be like, Mom, what do you think I should eat for dinner? And it's like, okay, you can ask, like, sure, what it's not hurting anyone. But like, what if you just asked yourself what you wanted to eat for dinner and like just did that by yourself? Just start with the small,
Mm.
small choices.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, just making it more, just yeah, like you said, the small, the little small things,
Yeah.
and not giving it off to others, and making more of these decisions, some decisions ourselves. I love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
How? Sorry, what were we gonna say?
No, just thank you. I'm glad it resonates.
What now? Tell us all about heart support. I looked into it, and one of the things that I loved is this whole like the forum or the community aspect where you can post anonymously, or somebody who wants to like volunteer can answer and like help people out. Like I love the angle that they came from with of just of like we've been in your shoes, we've been in the boat, we are sometimes still in the boat. We're with you. It's not like you guys are below us, like, or anything like
Mhm.
that. But anyway, tell us everything.
When I talk about heart sport, I like get emotional because I love it so much and it means everything to me. And like, um, it's been a very, um, like, what's the word to describe it? Um, Pause, cut. But it's been a very spiritual experience in a lot of ways for me. It's been a very aligned experience for me. And Will has showed up over and over and over again in HeartSupport for me. His mom was actually on the board for a while. We just had our first festival, and the festival occurred a few days after the anniversary of his death. And I have Rise Against lyrics tattooed on my arm because it's the song that I sang at his funeral, and Rise Against headlined our first festival.
Oh, I got the chills.
It's been, and not only that, but I got to interview Rise Against about their mental health and then use that interview to support Rise Against fans. I think that HeartSupport is the most amazing thing in the world, and it is the biggest gift that I get to work for them and this nonprofit. And what I think is really cool about it and what we're working on now is we have this technology that allows us to take our forum, which you described beautifully, where anyone can post what they're struggling with anonymously and anyone can support anyone anonymously. Or you can volunteer in a volunteer team. But we take our forum and we have tech that connects it to Instagram and to Facebook and to YouTube and to Discord. So when I interview an artist like Rise Against, for example, we did a collab post where Tim, the lead singer of Rise Against, talked about how it's hard for him to share his emotions sometimes. And then we say, can anyone relate? If you can relate, comment below telling us your story about your struggle. And then when they do, it automatically gets routed to our forum. People reply with encouragement and it automatically gets routed back. So everyone that opens up on Instagram receives support on Instagram. So they never have to leave the app, and it's just, they can receive encouragement for what they're going through. And it's really powerful because I think of what we were talking about, where social media is a place where there's a lot of like not kindness, not support, not encouragement. And so we're trying to change that and give artists the opportunity. Particularly, we work with a lot of musicians. We work with other influencers as well, but we were founded in the music community, in the metal music community. Our founder is the lead singer of August Burns Red, which is a metal band. So we work with a lot of musicians, and as someone who found support struggling with my mental health through a music community, I know how powerful it is to be able to go to your favorite musician and see them open up about what they're struggling with, and then say that you're struggling with the same thing and then receive support. It's everything. It's amazing. It's my favorite thing on earth. And I think we have so many different tools for people, but we do, in my opinion, my biased opinion, but we do a really great job of building community. And we have a test that people can take that will tell them where they're at with their mental health. And then they can create an action plan for how they want to improve it. And our community will support you and encourage you. And you can be in groups where you respond to topics on the forum. And it's just a really beautiful place. And I've been able to see a lot of people find healing. And why I think it's so special, and partially is because we're able to reach a lot of people who wouldn't maybe normally get therapy, or who wouldn't really reach out for professional help for whatever reasons, whether there's stigma or there's mistrust of the medical community, and they're able to find healing and also help other people as they're doing that. So I love HeartSupport. It's my favorite thing ever.
Your involvement in it has just, I've loved watching the, social media posts, and I can just tell like you put your heart into what your involvement in it, and what you create for them and everything. I did not know that that the guy from August Burn Red was the founder. You said?
Yes, Jake.
Okay.
He's the best. He is a sweet. It's actually a funny story. I didn't really listen to metal. I was a pop punk like girl through
Right.
and through. And so I didn't know who Jake was. So I worked for him for like a year and a half before I ever saw him play. And he's like, "Hey sister, I love you. Like, how are you? You're the best. And then I see him get on stage and he's like the scariest man alive. And I was like, there's some cognitive dissonance happening here. This can't be the same person that's like, I love you so much. You're the best. That's like screaming, like guttural screaming on stage. But I think that, his dichotomy as a person of like being so kind and then sounding so scary is very similar to what a lot of people in that community experience, which is
Mm-hmm.
a lot of judgment. They feel like they don't fit in, they feel misunderstood. Um, I'll never forget, I was walking with Jake and he's the kindest person ever. He's covered head to toe in tattoos. And him and I were walking and I watched a mom like move her kid away from us. And it's like, oh, like there's judgment around that. And that's what a lot of people in our community face. That's what a lot of people in a lot of communities face is like, I'm going to judge you before I know you because of X, Y, and Z. And so I'm so grateful that he created this place for people who don't feel like they fit in to fit in. He's amazing. I'm really grateful.
I think that's one thing that I'm so grateful that I learned is just like with the judgment is like you never know what somebody's going through
Yeah.
unless you are in their shoes. Like that's one thing I always lead with, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so now I think I came across as well that they're like partnered with BetterHelp. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So BetterHelp actually, so we have like a BetterHelp code. So if anybody is interested in trying therapy with BetterHelp, you can get, I believe our code is for 7 days free, but just go to betterhelp.com/heartsupport. And they also actually sponsored our festival. So we had our first mental health festival in Orlando this year in February, and it was amazing. Rise Against headlined, Parkway Drive headlined. It was 2 full days, and Spirit Box was there, Dance Gavin Dance. Like it was so many. It was amazing. It was the best. Jake, obviously, and they sponsored a stage at our festival, and people could get. I want to say a month of free therapy, but I could be wrong. But yeah, if you're interested, you can
Mm.
do betterhelp.com/heart support and get therapy services. And BetterHelp, you know, has different types of therapy. It can be texting, it can be calling, it can be video chatting as well.
How could somebody they wished, how could they get involved with Heart Support, whether it be, online or with the festival?
Such a good question. So the best way to get involved is to join our forum. And you can join that at forum.heartsupport.com or just go to our Instagram page and all of the links are on there, or by joining our Discord as well. We have a huge Discord. It has like 4,000 people where we talk about so many things. We also have a stream on Twitch. So you can watch the stream and start chatting there. We stream, I believe, 5 days a week. We have people who create art. We have people who video game. We have people who make music. We have people who talk about self-care. So there's a variety of ways to get involved. But if you want to start by either posting what you're struggling with or responding to those who are struggling, the best place is to join our forum and our Discord. And you can do that at our Instagram, which is Heart Support.
And how about the the next question I was gonna ask you? Let me say. Okay. So make sure I got them. Sorry, I'm like
No, you're good.
all right. So for what would some let me see how do I want to word this? What what else would you want to tell somebody? Okay, no, scratch that. What what are your hopes for the for mental health as a broad term, but like what are your hopes for for it for the future?
Oh, I always say that I think that the world would be a much better place if everyone was in therapy. Like, I just imagine if everybody got to talk about themselves for an hour a week with a professional, that a lot of our problems would go away. I know therapy isn't for everyone though, but I think that that would be amazing. I think my hope is that whether people have positive or negative mental health, that it just becomes a part of the conversation, that it just becomes a part of what we teach kids in school, that it becomes a piece to educate kids on in the same way that we teach them their ABCs or how to read. Because I think the truth is that emotional intelligence, we found studies show, I can't remember the specific statistic, but every dollar you invest as a business into mental health care, you receive back by like times 2 or 3. So we know that investing in emotional intelligence and mental health support has not only positive benefits for society and individuals, but also like the economy. And I say that just to like get the skeptics on board, I suppose. But it's just that it would be a part of the conversation, that from a young age, we would teach kids how to look in, how to say like, oh, how am I feeling today? Or like, oh, I'm sad. How do I know I'm sad? Oh, I know that I'm sad because my chest is starting to feel a little tight and my shoulders are feeling a little tense and maybe my toes are feeling a little tingly. Or I know I'm angry because my cheeks are getting hot. Like teaching those things, because I really think that the younger and the sooner we start to teach kids these things and we start to, as adults, bring them into the conversation in a normal way, that our quality of life as a whole will just go up.
I completely emphasize what you are saying. I was actually a teacher for like the past 4 years.
Oh,
So I've seen, at least from my coworkers and teacher friends, like a lot of people are incorporating some of the emotional like intelligence, teaching about emotions. How are you feeling today? Doing like check-ins with sticky
so
notes
awesome.
and, social emotional learning. So I think it's so important to start young with our, I mean, education system. I could go on a rant about that, but I think
Yeah.
that is something that I totally agree with you with that for sure. What would you say for somebody, anything else that you'd want to add for somebody maybe that is, currently struggling with some mental health or maybe occasionally sometimes struggles? Anything that you want to add for them that maybe we didn't cover?
I think like if you find yourself with the thought of like, this has to get better, or I wonder if it could get better than this, or like, are people really happy all of the time, or do they really feel good, or is everyone struggling like this? You should get help and see. Like, you should reach out for support and see. There's no shame in that. And at the very least, you'll learn something more about yourself. At the very best, you might find out that it actually does get better than the way that you're feeling right now. And that, there are people who want to help you and you're worth help, whether that's a professional or a friend. Never letting, as soon as you start to hear yourself saying things like, I don't deserve this, or I'm not good enough, or I'm unlovable, or nobody cares, or I'm alone. It's like, would you accept that if a friend said that to you? Probably not. So if you're saying it to yourself, you got to invite some other people in to comment, so that loop doesn't just get stronger and stronger and stronger. And the sooner you do that, the better, but it's never too late to do that.
What would you say that grief has taught you? If it's okay if I
Oh
know
my
we
gosh,
haven't
grief has
talked
taught
about
me
grief too much
everything.
yet, but I know that
Oh,
your friend has led you on this path. But yeah, what have you kind of learned from grief?
wow, that is a beautiful question. I think that grief has taught me everything. Um, I fully believe, and The Woman Who Ran with the Wolves is like a very beautiful book that I recommend
Oh my
everyone
gosh.
read. It's so good. And I firmly believe that life is a constant life, death, rebirth cycle. But grief and losing will has 100% completely made me who I am. And that's a really hard thing for me to say because I, of course, didn't want to lose him, right? And I wish that he were here and happy. Um, but that wasn't possible. And losing him has made me me. And it's put me down this path. And, you know, grief in every way has always brought me closer to the fullness of life and the truth of who I am. And I don't think that that's always true for everyone. And I think that's a very positive way of spinning it. And it's hard to see in the moment. But for example, my last breakup, and I started realizing that there was some patterns when I was losing people to like relationships. I was losing them and I was completely losing myself. Like I had felt like I completely lost who I was as a person and my identity. And that last breakup where I really hit rock bottom, it allowed me to see that what I was doing in relationships was I was completely abandoning myself. And if I didn't have to face that grief and struggle through it so much, I don't know that I would be where I am now. I don't know that I would be moving towards a life that feels more in alignment with who I am. I always say to my clients as well that grief accelerates life. So when you lose something, you notice things about life that you've never seen before. You notice things about the way that you want to live that you haven't noticed before. And like, I think that's why you hear people so often, it's like, oh, I had a near death experience, or I lost someone and my whole life changed. I realized that what I was doing actually didn't matter, or I started telling the people that I cared about how I felt. And those are kind of the things that I mean. And so many of my clients and myself included, it has been my loss that has made me live. And so don't be afraid of it. It's the most painful thing in the world, and it feels excruciating at the time. But the person that you've lost will live on in you the more that you're able to use that grief to alchemize it into your life.
I love that you tell your clients that grief accelerates life. You have so many beautiful like quotes that you tell them. I love
Oh,
that
thank
because
you.
that is
Thank you.
something that I 1000% resonate with. And I've said it's like, oh my God, like that was, I realized a few things when I lost her and then I was, in the hospital. I was like, oh my God, I'm not living my life. Like, who am I living for?
Yep.
What really matters to me is like people and my happiness and my health.
Yep.
So that like rock bottom, that really helped me um get to where I am. And like you said, it's like I wouldn't be who like I am without this loss. And like it's taught me so much. And like you said, I wish my mom was still here, but like I know, it's it
Yeah.
she was
Mm.
suffering and stuff. So like, but yeah, it's crazy how much it can teach you and
Mm.
how it can change the trajectory of our life and like how much in a sense like how good can come from it and like the rebirth, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to add? Um, or if you want to tell them where, they could find you or find heart support, etc. And I can put everything in the show notes too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This is such an amazing conversation. And, if anybody has any questions about anything I shared, or wants to work with me as a therapist, or wants to get involved in heart sport, you can send me a DM at taylorpalmby on Instagram. That's the best place to reach me. You can follow me on TikTok too. I'm working on a website, so hopefully that'll be up soon. But you can also, if you want to work with me, find me on Psychology Today, Taylor Palmby. And yeah, go to HeartSupport, follow our Instagram, join our Discord, do all the things, and reach out to me if you do. And thank you so much for listening.
And are you able to work with anybody like virtually?
Yes. So I can work with people virtually as well.
That's
Yes.
so
I can
amazing.
only technically right now work with people in New York or California, but I'm going to be probably transitioning to more of a mental health coaching model. So if you wanted to work with me as a mental health coach, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I have to call it that. You could reach out and we could do that virtually as well.
Wonderful. Oh my God. Thanks so much for coming on. I like you and your involvement in Heart Support inspire me so much, and
Thank
I
you.
totally like resonate with the content that you create, and how how, and I love how open and honest that you are about everything. So your work matters. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I
thank
totally will
you.
have to have you on again in the future to talk maybe like
Yes.
relationships and stuff, because I know that's
Would love.
community, because I know that's something that's so important for my list, for everybody and the listeners. So thanks
Thank you
so much
so much.
for
It's
coming
amazing. Thank
on.
you.
I'll talk to you soon.